We are going to get to the U.S. border reopening today in just a minute, but we're going to begin with a viral Twitter poll that happened over the weekend. Elon Musk, of course, as you can probably predict, his social media followers have voted that the Tesla chief should sell 10% of his stake in the electric car maker, worth some $21 billion. 58% of the 3.5 million Twitter users who took part in the poll said they'd support the move. Tesla fell as much as 7.2% in pre-market trading compared with Friday's close, and is the latest crowdsourcing exercise we've seen in Musk's long history of using his Twitter account and his legions of fans on the platform to stoke interest in his company. So let's dig into it all with Bloomberg's industrial reporter Ryan Bean, who's been writing about this over the weekend for us, and also Quicktake's Alex Webb, who is in London for us. Ryan, let's just start with you. There's a story that you and our Dana Hall worked on. Why would Musk even float this idea?
Well, I mean, it's Elon Musk, so sort of why not? I mean, this is just as you pointed out, the latest example of Elon, sort of pushing the envelope on Twitter in terms of what he says about his company, how it moves shares. It's happened before. I mean, you'll remember the infamous funding secured tweet when he, suggested without actually having done any of the legwork previously that he might take the company private at $420 a share. That ultimately led to an SEC settlement and a requirement for him to get his tweets that might disclose material information checked by a Tesla lawyer. He's used Twitter to disseminate information about Tesla vehicle crashes and put stuff on blog posts on the company's website that got him in trouble with the NTSB a few years back. So I mean, it's sort of a new iteration of what we've sort of come to expect to a degree from Elon Musk. This time it just happens to involve about a $21 billion stake in his company.
Yeah, Elon being Elon. I do want to get into the SEC regulatory stance in a minute, but Alex, I want to get your read on it. I mean, what do you make of this latest iteration of Elon Musk using his Twitter to talk about Tesla?
So, I mean, it's likely to be, we don't quite know, of course, what's going inside his head or indeed in the strategy meetings at Tesla, but we do suspect that he may have a $15 billion tax bill coming up based on some options that he has. And so there is, of course, a big discussion at the moment on Capitol Hill about whether there should be changes to the law, because as much as we talk about Elon being the richest man in the world, most of those gains are fundamentally unrealized because they are tied up in Tesla stock. And so that means that for every time he gets richer on paper, that doesn't actually translate into additional revenue, in tax revenue for the Treasury. So by framing this sale as something which is actually something to ensure that the Treasury gets some cash from him for those otherwise unrealized gains, he's framing the narrative, but it may be that he had to do it anyway. Don't forget, of course, that he has something like $500 million in loans from banks. The odds are that is secured against the value of his stake in Tesla and SpaceX and other companies. So that is the criticism that is leveled at a lot of incredibly wealthy people, that they don't pay tax because they just get everything in the form of loans with their equity as collateral. So it may be just a way of reframing that narrative.
Got it. And is the idea that he was going to begin paying some of these loans this year or sooner rather than later? I mean, Ryan, what do you think?
There was sort of an expectation that he would have to sell some of his shares just in part because he has a number of options that are coming due early next year. So I spoke to an analyst yesterday who said he was expected to do some degree of a share sale, as this year sort of drew to a close. Doing selling 10% of his stake, this analyst said wouldn't be that far outside of the bounds of what he might have had to do anyway. And to Alex's point, framing it as sort of a move to ensure that the U.S. Treasury, sort of gets a cut on his unrealized gains, might help sort of, soften the impact, if you will, because oftentimes, an insider selling a lot of shares in their company is often greeted as a negative signal.
Well, and what about framing the narrative for retail investors too, Alex? I mean, we mentioned how many followers Elon has on Twitter. A lot of people participated in this poll. I mean, of course, we don't know what's going inside his head, but what do you think is sort of the calculation behind that?
Well, a lot of the conversation about Elon's utterances on Twitter recently have been to do with cryptocurrency. It's been Dogecoin and Shiba Inu, and parsing every last sentence to see if he's possibly invested in a cryptocurrency. This is reframing refocusing, I would say, the conversation on Tesla. This is the biggest source of his wealth. It is the company that is also the only publicly traded one, and therefore getting retail investors involved in it is something that's easier to do on Twitter than, for example, SpaceX, which is a private company. So, refocusing narrative on the company he leads, on Tesla, isn't a bad idea. Of course, the way in which he's doing so, it could, to Ryan's point, he's said in the past that, not Ryan, Elon has said in the past that Tesla may be overvalued. And so if you read it in that sense, is this a signal that it's overvalued and he's making hay while the sun shines? Well, I think there is merit to that interpretation.
Yeah, and Ryan, just last week, we saw Elon Musk was tweeting about world hunger and his wealth. And so what is going on? I'm trying to figure this out. I mean, in one situation, you might think he might just be trolling everybody with his wealth.
Look, I'd be the last person to. I should be the last person to try to understand what's going on in Elon's head. That's not a good idea for me to do. But let's just keep something in mind. A Twitter poll doesn't really have any kind of real teeth to it. This isn't real until there's a filing. This isn't real until there's actually a clear disclosed plan to dispose of this 10% stake in some form or fashion. So until then, we don't really exactly know what he's going to do, when he's going to do it, how he's going to do it.
Well, what about, Ryan, real in the fact of regulatory implications? We know that there's a tweet that Elon put out, his new name, Lord Edge. Last time he got in trouble years ago with putting out company news on Twitter, would he get in trouble potentially with this latest move?
It's possible, I suppose. I mean, in 2019, he amended a settlement with the SEC that added some specific topics that he's not permitted to discuss on Twitter without clearing them first with the Tesla attorney. We don't know if these tweets over the weekend were vetted by that person at Tesla. And if it were to come to pass that he says he's going to sell this stake in his company, if he doesn't, if that's interpreted as manipulating shares in some way, I mean, who knows? Maybe it attracts SEC scrutiny again, but it's too soon to tell.
And Alex, final question to you. Do you see this having any sort of reaction, or Tesla stock reacting at all when it opens in just a few minutes and throughout the day?
Yes, Tesla is called 5% down, which if you think about the fact that Elon owns 17% of Tesla stock, therefore if he's selling 10%, that would imply it's 1.7% of the capital. So therefore, you might realistically think, well, if you're selling 1.7%, that would be the size of the stock reaction. The stock reaction is a lot bigger than that. So the implications are broader. It gets to that point that maybe investors think that Elon knows something they don't, or that Elon thinks the company is overvalued. And so those are fundamentally the implications right now.
Yeah, definitely something we're going to have to pay attention to. All right, guys, thanks so much for starting us off. Bloomberg's industrials reporter Ryan Bean, and also Quicktake's Alex Webb in London for us. Thank you both so much.